At exactly 12:01 a.m., when the station clock made that tiny click that most people would never notice, Vivon was already sitting on the cold metal bench at platform number 3, the same way he had for the past 27 nights, hands locked together, elbows on his knees, staring at the empty tracks like something invisible was scheduled to arrive. Because he wasn't waiting for a train, he was waiting for the version of himself who used to believe life would start soon. The platform smelled like rust, dust, and old rain. The overhead light flickered every few seconds, and each time it dimmed, his shadow disappeared, and each time it returned, he saw himself again, still there, still stuck, while somewhere in the distance a train horn cried into the dark like a warning he had already ignored too many times. And that sound dragged him back to 3 weeks earlier, to the morning of the interview that could have changed everything, the job he had dreamed about, prepared for, imagined telling people about, the one that would finally prove he wasn't just potential. Except that morning, his alarm rang, and he opened his eyes and felt it, that heavy, invisible pressure on his chest, the whisper that said, "What if you go and they see you're not actually that good?" And instead of fear pushing him out of bed, it glued him to the mattress, 10 more minutes turning into an hour, the sun climbing higher while his chance quietly expired. And by the time he reached the office building, breathless, sweaty, heart racing, the glass doors were already closed to him, the receptionist giving him that polite, distant smile people use when you're no longer part of the story. And ever since then, his brain had been replaying that moment on a loop, not to help him grow, but to punish him, because regret feels like responsibility even when it's just self-torture. And that's why he came here, to this platform where his father used to bring him as a kid, where trains meant adventure instead of consequences, where his dad once said, "Every train is a choice. You either get on or you watch it leave." A sentence that felt harmless back then and brutal now. And as the wind slid down the tracks and wrapped around him, he heard footsteps approach, slow and steady, and an older man sat beside him without asking, coat worn, eyes calm, the kind of face that looked like it had already survived things Vivon was still running from. And after a long silence, the man asked, "Which train are you waiting for?" And Vivon let out a breath that almost turned into a laugh and said, "The one I keep missing." And the man nodded like he understood something deeper than the words and replied, "Late again?" And Vivon's head turned sharply because that question felt less like a guess and more like a diagnosis. And suddenly the noise of the world seemed to lower, like the night itself was leaning in to listen. And the man continued, "You're not lazy, you're scared of finding out your limits, so you never test them." And those words didn't hit like an insult, they landed like truth, the kind that makes your chest tight because you've been hiding from it. And another train blasted past without stopping, wind slamming into them, metal screaming against metal, and the man pointed at the blur of lights and said, "Chances move like that, fast, loud, and gone, and you don't chase them, you arrive before they do." And Vivon swallowed hard, his throat dry, because for the first time he wasn't arguing in his head, he wasn't defending himself with excuses about timing or stress or bad luck, he just felt exposed, like someone had opened a window in a room he'd kept sealed for years. And quietly he asked, "How do I stop being this person?" And the man looked at the clock, 12:27 a.m., then back at him and said, "You don't stop being him all at once, you just become someone else for the next 5 minutes." And that sentence hung in the air, simple, almost too small to matter, yet heavy enough to shift something inside him, because 5 minutes didn't sound terrifying, didn't sound like a lifetime commitment or a personality transplant, just a tiny rebellion against the version of himself that always chose later over now. And as the wind settled and the platform returned to stillness, Vivon felt it, that strange, unfamiliar sensation. Not motivation, not confidence, but the quiet electric possibility that maybe his life hadn't been ruined by missed trains, only paused by fear. And maybe, just maybe, the next arrival wouldn't be a train at all, but the moment he finally stood up before it did.